We are live.
We invite people
of all backgrounds
to share their stories.
Through nuanced conversations
and forward thinking
and not taking ourselves too seriously.
Everyone's story matters.
Every voice is important.
Life is polarizing,
but not everything is black and white.
Come join us
as we fade to gray.
Take her away, Seth.
Hello, Fade to Gray listeners. We have another episode. Another episode for you all, and I am stoked. Today, we are going to interview Derrick Day, who is an author, a leadership consultant, and a professional speaker. All right? This guy has been preaching and teaching about the impact of unconditional love for nearly 15 years. And he is the author of Deconstructing Religion and the co-author of Satan, Let Me Refresh Your Memory. And I am very excited for this. So how are you doing today, Derrick?
I'm doing fantastic, Seth. It's good to be here.
Great intro, Seth.
We're happy to have you. You're welcome.
Glad you're here, Derrick.
Omar and Elizabeth, is good to meet Elizabeth for the first time. Yeah. And Omar, it's good to be with you again, man.
Dude, it's going to be a blast, man. Looking forward to hearing your story and getting into it. This is going to be fun.
All right.
So to kick this off, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you've been teaching on unconditional love for nearly 15 years, but I'm all about hearing people's stories. So tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are.
You know, it's a very interesting journey. I grew up in Detroit. My mom was a single parent. And me and my brother, we were rambunctious. we were hood, so street. And I got into a little bit of trouble, and my mom reached out to my dad and said, listen, you need to get these guys and do something with them. And so we went to spend the summer with my dad in Burnsville, Minnesota.
Okay.
And while we were there, my dad gave us the option if we wanted to go back to Detroit or stay there with him. And so out of my mother's 3 children, I was the only one that decided to stay. So I stayed there in Burnsville, Minnesota, and I was one of 5 black kids.
That's a culture shock in and of itself, coming from Detroit. So
that it was. And so I learned a lot. I learned.
How old were you at that point?
15.
15. Oh, wow. Yeah. That's already a hard year for transitioning from, trying to become a man and all that stuff. And then I guess, oh man, and the stereotypes and the racism going into Minnesota. So you had to play every sport. You had to be like the funny black guy.
Yeah, man, all the expectations. It's like the Eagles song, "The New Kid in Town." That's basically how that was life for me. But while I was there, I met a guy who I played football with, and he asked me one day, "Say, hey, you want to learn how to ski?" I'm like, hell yeah! So
we call that white peopling.
It actually was, and so went to this thing, and it was in the basement of a Presbyterian church in Edina, Minnesota.
So you're doing lines of coke. Then it sounds like if you're in a basement of a church, like that's a different type of skiing.
No, it was actually legitimate skiing. So like we would meet on Wednesdays, but on the weekends we'd go skiing. And so these guys, they taught me how to ski. And this thing was called Sun Summit. And I promise you that for the first couple of months that I went there, I thought it was SUN Summit. I really didn't get it. But then it all started coming together when I realized it was SON Summit, right? And these guys shared with me this unconditional love, this accepting God, this accepting Jesus. And I wanted to be a part of that.
Okay.
So I got quote unquote born again.
There you go.
In Edina, Minnesota. And this was November of 78. think it was. Yeah, something like that. Anyway,
Derrick,
so
you're gonna have to explain this more to me because I'm still lost on skiing in a basement. So like,
no. What I'm saying, that was where the group met, but we actually went to different skiing areas in Minnesota.
Okay, I was thinking like cross country skiing or something. What's going on here?
I'm sorry, I didn't explain it completely. Yeah. No, that was the gathering point, the meeting point. Like we'd meet there, and then we'd go skiing, and then we'd have fellowship on Wednesday nights, and we look at the slideshow.
You're being evangelized, is what was happening.
Yeah. People would play music and all of that. Yeah, I mean, it was. They sucked me in.
Free pizza, man.
That too.
The ways of ministry and evangelicalism. It's all about bringing in. You just provide kids with food and fun events and.
Well, don't forget the hot girls.
Yeah, and the hot girls.
Were there hot girls at the ski
it's
camp?
all about the girls,
and then telling us what heaven's like. That's
Yeah, there were hot girls, and there was skiing, and there was music. It was free pizza, soda. It was the bomb, and so I got quote unquote born again, and then shortly after that, me and my dad, we fell out, and I decided I wanted to go back to Detroit. So I went back to Detroit, and this was the funny part. Because when I got back, everybody found out, hey, Derrick's a Jesus freak. And that was really amazing because, everybody who knew me, they knew me by the 3 W's, weed, whiskey, and women.
I like those
so that
W's.
So that was how I rolled. And so the first thing they said is, hey, and you're into this Jesus thing now, so you're going to stop smoking weed. I'm like, yeah, no more weed. I said, so you're going to stop drinking too. And I'm like, yeah, no more drinking. That's cool. And it said, so what about these women? What about these girls, man? What are you going to do? And that was when it just kind of went off the rails for me because I'm like, God damn it, I'm like, that was my weakness. That was my kryptonite. And so it wasn't long afterward that I got into a quote unquote backslidden position. And I went on through life, just living life. I joined the Navy. I was in the Navy for 7 years and had a good run at the Navy. And then I got out of the Navy and I got married. And then a funny thing happened. Well, first of all,
thank you for your service, right? That's what you're supposed to say.
You're welcome. Yeah. But my wife at the time, she got cancer. And it was like during that time, I was also dabbling in politics. I was a radio talk show host. I had a regular show on WNIS in Norfolk, Virginia, and I was doing a lot of stuff for Republican politics in Virginia.
But still backslidden? Would you still consider yourself a Christian though, but just not doing any of the?
At that time, I considered myself a Christian, but I wasn't perfect. I'm born again, but I'm not perfect. That was my out.
Kind of like Trump.
Well, yeah. Republican, saved, but not perfect, right? So, yeah. So,
I'm sorry for that comparison. I brought you on the show just to compare you to Trump. That's nice.
Yeah, I was the Black Donald Trump. And so anyway, I hear this voice one day say to me to share my gospel.
Audible?
Audible voice, like I hear you guys.
Interesting.
And I still hold true to this day, that because I think that, in some cases when people quote unquote hear from God, it's like the mayonnaise went bad, right? There was something else, or you had some bad booze or some bad weed, something went sideways.
Or a mental illness.
Or some good weed.
So, but it was none of those.
If you have some weed that can make me hear God, I'll buy an ounce right now.
Moving on.
I almost said something, but no.
Sorry.
So anyway, I heard this and I went through these gyrations with God. I'm like, okay, God, I'm not really cut out for preaching. I'm not cut out for this. And then 2 years after that, my wife died. And that was a big turning point in my life, because that was the point where I realized that, that God was something more than this abstract concept that I've been taught. And so it took a while after that. She died in 1994. And it was like right around, I want to say 2000. when I decided to answer the call and go into ministry. And so I went down that path and went apostolic, went word of faith, and, went hardcore legalist and flirted with Calvinism and all of these, different religious gyrations. But the point is that I reached a point where I said, okay, am I really doing these things because I believe them? Or am I doing them because somebody told me this was the right thing to do? And so I went down. Basically, it was all being spoon-fed. I wasn't thinking for myself. And then I began to think for myself. And that was when my deconstruction process began, which that's the deconstruction process began about 10 years ago. And so that's kind of the lead up to where I am now. That's the thumbnail sketch. There's a ton of detail.
So Derrick, after 2000, after you're kind of like diving into your whole faith and Christianity and that whole path into Calvinism so strongly, were you taking on like leadership roles and stuff in the church as well? I mean, were you like doing like extra biblical studies, or was it just kind of just through relationships with people and then just like the path of just happened to be that way as far as you were seeking God?
No, pretty much everywhere I went, I was recognized as someone who needed to be groomed for leadership. So, everybody wanted to be a spiritual father and be the one that birthed this thing into the world and blah, blah, blah.
Why do you think that was? Because you're pulling at some heartstrings here, because that's my
We've
story.
heard that.
Yeah, that's my whole thing. It's like always like, oh, you're so anointed. Oh, and I always thought it was because it was the color of my skin. Like, I mean, like, okay, so like, let's be honest. Like, I mean, like, what is this anointing that it's like, I'm cool, so I speak a different language, and so I'm more accepting, so then I get more people through the doors. Is that really what it's all about? Or is it something more deep? Is it actually something spiritual? Is there something about us that is anointed that other people don't have, or whatever?
Let me say this. I believe that all of humanity is anointed. I don't believe that there's a single human being that does not have the Holy Spirit dwelling inside. Okay. So what's different are giftings. The Spirit, the anointing, all of that stuff is universal. That's ubiquitous, right? But everybody has different giftings. Like, for example, I am not a singer. The ministry of music is not my gift. So I'm not going to be the one to lead us in song or anything like that. That's not my gift. But there are a couple of things that I've always been regarded by my peers, by my family, by friends as a leader. So I think that I have a gifting in leadership. And then the other thing is that I went through
could that be like just a strong personality? Like, is that just maybe just another way of saying that too? I don't think that I have a strong personality, but I think that was cultivated. I don't think that was inherent. What's your Enneagram score?
Oh, I don't know.
You sounds like you're a 7 to me. That's what I asked. What I am. I don't know. Whatever.
Well, what are you?
A 7. So,
a 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's that outgoing. A lot of people who are that type of personality, I think, fall in either like 7 or 8 category a lot of times. So.
Yeah.
Anyways,
yeah, I'm pretty outgoing, pretty gregarious, and all of that. But the thing is that I think that people latch on to that. They see that this guy's like a leader, and at that time, career wise, I was in leadership positions, so it just kind of like seemed to be a natural flow. And then the other thing is that as a child, I was a stutterer. I had a very, difficult, and it wasn't really a speech impediment. I think it was more like a product of shyness, a product of not really feeling valued. And so I was unsure of myself, but I practiced. I made a conscientious effort to become an effective speaker.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people see that you have the gift of speaking and you have the gift of leadership, therefore you must have the gift of ministry, a pastoral leadership ministry. And so I was groomed in that pretty much from the onset of my Advent in a ministry.
Okay, that makes sense then. But like, it never actually led into like any sort of like actual like schooling, or you weren't in any part of a ministry organization that required anything like that in order to actually be a minister. So it sounds like you probably did a lot more actual like preaching than I ever did in my 10 years of ministry. I did a lot more stacking of chairs and like,
I did that too.
Did you?
Because you had to do that to earn your way into the pulpit,
right.
Because God wants to test you.
Yeah, but once you got to the preaching part,
right,
you didn't have to pick up the chairs anymore, right?
No, I still did.
You still did,
because that was like the cost of being a part of leadership. I was the pastor's armor bearer. I worked in picking up chairs, cleaning the church, all of that. I did because that was the cost. That was, basically that was essentially, if you use like mob speak, it was how you made your bones.
Okay. So it sounds like your involvement in the church has very much impacted you on this journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, one of the things that I learned when I became a pastor, I didn't make people do things in order to earn something. Because if what Jesus gives us is indeed free, then that means that whatever Jesus has given me, I must give free. So, there were no requirements or anything like that. Now, I have had some situations, like once I had a guy who was in the church and he wanted to preach, and he had been groomed to be a pastor in another church, another life. And the problem that I had is that this guy's sermons were very legalistic. And normally I don't tell up and coming preachers, hey, listen, let me read your sermon before you preach it. I'm not that guy, but I had to be that guy with him because we were a very grace oriented church, and this guy was very legalistic. And there were a couple of times where I had to go back and spend a couple of weeks undoing what he had done after he had preached. So, but that, again, all of that is shaped by, past experiences. But, you talked about ecumenical organizations, and I served in three ecumenical organizations. One is Kingdom Covenant International, which I co-founded, and now that's led by Bishop Anthony Calloway, a good friend of mine. I passed the reins on to him. And then I was also the general secretary of an organization called Kingdom Builders of America, and I served with them for 2 years. And then I was also the presiding bishop of the International Circle of Faith, which is a huge ecumenical organization. I think that they have like 4,500 churches worldwide. And so I was the titular head of that organization. And the funny thing is that I've never had any quote unquote theological education. Everything that I've learned, it came from my own study and by the download of the Holy Spirit, if you will.
And you were part of those, say that word again, ecumenical.
Yeah.
I knew I was going to butcher that, which is interesting. But I was wondering, were you part of the same like church the whole time that you were doing these other ministries? And it sounded like, were you ever a senior pastor of any of that?
Yeah.
Okay, so is it?
Yeah, we folded our church in August of last year. After 8 years. It was 8 years in Arizona and another 2 years in Texas. So I was a senior pastor for 10 years.
Okay. And that was all kind of through this, but it all was through the same denomination that you're introduced to in 2000?
No, actually, I went through several gyrations. The first church that I served in, my brother-in-law was the pastor. And that turned out to be, a clusterfuck of epic proportions. Then we left Detroit. We went to Arkansas, and there I was with a Word of Faith church.
Damn. And Word of Faith.
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
Yep.
You just
Yeah,
you,
it
did,
was,
you didn't get enough racism in Minnesota. Apparently, you're just like, give me more.
It was interesting.
Did you have the
because,
snakes in the basement?
You know,
The snake movement thing.
no. I don't mess around with snakes. We went to Arizona. I took a position I was a director of change management for a Fortune 100 company.
Oh wow!
And so that was what took us to Arkansas.
And so did you? But did you stay in the same vein of ministry then? Like, because you
No, it changed gears because I was in a very legalistic Pentecostal
word of faith
under my brother. No, this was Pentecostal. Then it was Word of Faith in Arkansas. Okay, and it was Word of Faith / apostolic.
Yeah,
and then I left there and I got the left foot of fellowship, and I helped a brother plant a church there, which was more in the vein of, like, say, Miles Monroe, that Kingdom First school of thought. And then we left there. We went to Texas, and while I was in Texas, we basically started a small church that didn't really gain traction. It was like Texas was sort of a waypoint. It wasn't like someplace where we really should have been. It just kind of worked out, because I had got another position down there.
So you kept starting churches. Was that just because people were telling you that that's what you were supposed to do? I mean, because
that's what I felt I was supposed to do. That I was a church planner, and I've actually pastored 2 churches, and I've served in several churches, but I've actually helped plant, I don't know, I think like 8 churches.
You will have a massive crown in heaven.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get a mansion. Like, it's,
I always thought the stacking chairs is what really did it. It's the widow's mite, man.
Yeah, stacking chairs and cleaning toilets. I secured my place in heaven through all of that. Absolutely.
Yeah. So from Texas, so was the next stop then Arizona after that?
It was Arizona,
and that's where you are currently.
Yep.
And so once you made it to Arizona, so you were talking to us about the church plant in Texas and being kind of not really affiliated with any of the other denominations you've been affiliated with up until that point. So that was kind of when you were kind of maybe breaking off into like, so when you got to Arizona, whatever church you planted there, is that the same one that you just released a couple years ago, or was it?
It was basically the same church that we were doing in Texas, just in Arizona.
Okay.
Same name, same, incorporation and all of that. But this one was actually, I think, pretty successful in terms of its impact to the community and to the lives that were changed by people who came through our doors. I think that we were effective. One of the big problems that I faced, though, was the advent of Donald Trump, because I was a unique pastor in that I was a Black pastor with a predominantly white congregation. Mm-hmm. Doesn't happen much.
No.
But wonderful people, but Trumpism is, I don't know, man. It's like its effect on the Christian mind is something really to behold. And, when we would deal with things like, a Black person being killed, police brutality, and, we want the entire congregation to kind of get on board with this and, help us to, shout this thing down, and it just didn't happen. And so I just kind of reached a point where I kind of got fed up, and I said, if I continue to do this, knowing that when these situations do come up, that they won't be addressed in our congregation, then I'm a hypocrite. And that's something that really, it really dug at me. And so I had to do a lot of thinking, and me and my wife, we talked and just, did a lot of crying. And then I just made the decision, we're not going to do this anymore.
That had to be a hard decision.
It was because I actually I love preaching. I love to, and I'm not really like a preacher. It's like I'm not and God said,
Can I get an amen?
I've seen you get excited before. Like, I've seen the preacher come out in you a couple times.
Yeah, it's there. I try to subdue it where I try to stick to teaching.
You've done pretty good on this
and make it more
this episode.
So, try to keep it simple. But it was just, I miss doing that. I miss the fellowship. I miss all of that. But at the same time, at the end of the day, you have to be true to yourself, and you have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and be happy with who you see. You have to be true to your own identity.
That's good.
And, and then the other thing, after I left church, I went through this thing. I got to tell you this story because this is a really good story, and this kind of leads into how I met you guys. Because there was an incident, and I don't remember what it might have been after. It wasn't after Philando Castile. I don't remember who it was, but anyway, there was another police brutality incident. Someone died, and so
fake news.
I've been a pro-lifer all my life, all of my adult life, and I've given myself generously to pro-life causes, and so when this happened, I went to all of my pro-life friends and I said, hey, if you guys are pro-life, can you support me in this? And they're like, oh, Derrick, it'll go away. All of this racism and stuff. Just stop talking about the racism. Just focus on Jesus. Don't. And so basically, when I look back on that now, that what they were really saying is, stop rocking the boat. Be a good little Negro and don't talk about these things. And that was really what it came down to. And so I had said something about the word fuck. And a bunch of the grace community really got their draws in a bunch over this. How dare you say that? How dare you say that? And I'm like, okay, wait a second. You guys are more messed up over the word fuck than you are about black people being killed by police.
That's a problem.
And I said, can you see the hypocrisy in that? Can you see the absence of Christ in that? And so at that point, at that leading up to that point, man, I had hardly cussed in, almost 20 years. I mean, it was rare, but now I don't give a fuck. I'll cuss up a storm because listen, if that is the thing that's going to turn your crank, but the greater things that people go through, like that when, my LGBTQ friends are being mistreated, being discriminated against, being oppressed, being disenfranchised. And then when you see, young black men and women that are just being executed by police, I'm like, and you don't want to say anything? Oh, okay. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to give you something to really sink your teeth into. I'm going to cuss up a fucking storm. And so ever since then, I've been like, and then I did a podcast with Aaron Abke and Kyle Butler, and this is the best, the most downloaded episode of my podcast ever, and that is the cussing, cursing, and swearing episode. Because cussing, cursing, and swearing are two different. There are three different things.
I agree.
And there are biblical prohibitions against cursing and swearing, but there's nothing against cussing. Not a thing. So when I pointed that out, it's like, the religious wingnuts went overboard. They lost their mind, lost their shit, and came at me with barrels blazing. But I say, hey, this is your Bible. This is what your Bible says. And then I began to go back and really reverse engineer things. And that was when I got to the point where I said, wait a second. I was under the belief that this Bible was inerrant and infallible.
Uh-oh.
And now I'm seeing that it isn't.
Heretic.
And that really push people over the edge.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, I won't say that I'm fully deconstructed. I won't say that I'm totally free, because I believe that that the law of attraction, I haven't mastered that yet, because I'm not financially independent. But that's the final frontier, literally. It's like everything else. We talked this morning when Seth and PK Langley were on, and PK really helped me to overcome all of my hangups about LGBTQ, right? Because I was, God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, and homosexuality is an aberration, and all of that, right? And PK, someone who I loved, respected, and admired, when she came out, I had to process that. I had to really, okay, where am I? Who am I regarding this? And so at that point, I'm like, no, I'm not going to be against that. How dare me be against that? Someone and I don't care whether you're born that way or whether you choose it. That's not my business. My business is to love you and accept you right where you are. It's not up to me to change you or to preach to you or, pray that you come out of it. That's all bullshit. I'm just like, no. So, I went through some things where that was a deconstruction. The Bible was a deconstruction, and then all of these things about social mores and all of that was another deconstruction. So anyway, pretty much I'm free. I'm literally free. I don't have any hangups. It's like, people say, well, what about people that do this, this, and this? And I say, well, here's the thing. If you do something, for example, and people have different takes on pornography. I'm like this. If you're not hurting anyone by doing this, then who am I to judge? It's like there are certain universal constants, like don't steal, don't kill. Those are kind of universal constants, right? So because by nature, each one of those things that you do, when you do them, you're offending the rights of someone else. You are breaching that threshold. So my rights end where yours begin. Your rights end where mine begin. So as long as what you do doesn't offend me, I say this all the time. If somebody is doing something that you don't do, but it offends you that they do it, they're not the ones that have a problem. You have the problem. Mm-hmm. You're the one, because you're the one that's in bondage, right? And right. That's my whole, if I could say who I am, what I am in a nutshell, why I do what I do, it's to help people be free in love. That's it. To move forward in love.
It's good stuff, man.
We need it. We need it really bad right now in this country.
And like there are some people, like I'm going to pick on my buddy Kyle Butler here, and because
it's interesting, because that's where my brain went when you're talking about, because his whole message is love too. So I was going to have some questions regarding that, but let's talk Kyle.
Kyle and I are very good friends. We're very good friends. A matter of fact, I'll say even deeper. He's more like a sibling to me. I mean, it's that close. But here's the thing. Kyle is very. He is very measured, and the thing is that Kyle is not going to he will never be confrontational. But that ain't my testimony. I'm going to say some things and do some things that are kind of in the face of, and what I try not to do is be in the face of individuals, because my battle's not with you individually. Whoever you are, my battle is what you're yoked to spiritually, emotionally, ideologically. Those are the things that I'm against. So if you're tied to something that's politically reprehensible, I'm going to speak on that. If you're tied to something that is offensive or hurtful to groups of people, whether it be racist, whether it be sexist, or whether it be gender prosecutional, I'm going to say something. You're not going to get a hall pass from me. I'm not that guy. And the other thing too is that I remember when when I was a preacher or when I was a pastor, I was like, okay.
But if love does no harm, though.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that I'm not trying to harm any person, but I'm out to fucking destroy systems. I'll be perfectly candid.
How do you do that without it becoming a shit show, especially like on a platform like Facebook or something like that? How do you? Because so this ties into my question then that I was going to go anyway. As far as love being the message, love passionately, and I asked the same thing to Kyle. We had him on a while back when we just released the episode recently. Like
great show, by the way.
What does love even look like? I mean, that can easily be such a cop out when I was raised with like tough love situation where it's like, I'm gonna discipline you because I love you. and then you have Kyle on the other hand, who's like, my interpretation of love is love does no harm. So if something looks like it's harming somebody else, I'm not gonna do that. And so with what you're talking about, that's why I think everybody's version and brand of love is different. And then it goes, well, how if you are responding to some sort of hurt or trauma in your life, then you're not responding out of love, even if we think that we are. So how does all that work, especially on the platform of like a Facebook or something like that, where we're all trapped in our homes and being keyboard warriors, so how does that work with love? How does that reconcile and everything?
That's an amazing question, Omar. And this is what my response is, that love, when you look at it in a quantum sense, in other words, you're looking for the most elemental parts of a thing, you see empathy and compassion. So empathy simply says, I want to walk a mile in your footsteps. I want to see it through your eyes. I remember when the Charlottesville incident went down, there were a lot of people that were just, hey, take all of these racists and string them up by the balls kind of thing. And I'm like, that's not really the answer. I don't like racism. I don't like racist behavior. I don't. But I also understand that people don't become racist in a vacuum. It isn't just something that one day they wake up and they say, well, that dude's a nigger. And it doesn't happen that way. There are some things, there's a process.
Racists come of age. It happens just like a bar mitzvah. It just happens.
Well, it isn't even that. It's like people go through things. And so I try to understand. I really want to understand where people are and how they get to different positions. But the thing is that I want to see the system dismantle. Because if I can dismantle the system or be disparaging enough toward it to cause it to be doubted, to cause it to be flawed, to cause it to be something that is not sticky, then I can be loving and give the person who's trapped in that system a soft landing place. Okay, and that's really important, because at the end of the day, if you snatch the rug out from someone, man, you better have an air mattress under them, because otherwise you're going to hurt them. So I'm very conscious about that. But the second part of this love equation is compassion. Do I actually give a fuck? Do I really care? And I'll give you guys a thought experiment that you can try, and this will be fun. This will be fun. If someone asks you, they say, hey, Elizabeth, how are you? You can respond by saying, do you care? Or do you have time?
Yeah.
And what will happen is that when you do that, you're going to raise either the righteous indignation of the person, or you're going to raise their level of consciousness, because now they're going to really think about what happens, or what is part of this exchange when they exchange a pleasantry, right? People say, how you doing? They really don't care. They honestly don't. But what by this little thought experiment, you raise the consciousness of people and you make them think about, the next time they go to ask someone, hey, how are you? Because you never know what you're going to get. And so the point of all of this is that in railing against systems and railing against ideologies and railing against principles and all of this, systems, what happens is you're causing people to think about what it is they actually believe. And the reality is that most people are autonomous. They really don't think about what it is that they believe or why they believe it. It's been spoon-fed to them, and it sounded good at the moment, or it tasted good at the moment, and they decide to run with it. But if you back up and reverse engineer, I'll be honest that the average person, if they were to actually consider what it is that they actually believe and begin to reverse engineer that, to disassemble it, look at its parts, they'll find that in reality, man, I don't believe that shit. That's
true.
Man, that's crazy. But the thing is that by and large, and this is not just an American
or they double
phenomenon.
down, and convince themselves harder that that's what they believe, and
Yeah, and you see a lot of that. That's part of the Trump phenomenon. It's like they can't admit that something is not right, so they have to double down on it. And sometimes that happens. But here's the other thing too. Let me say this: the people that double down are not the people that do any serious intellectual rationing, or they're basically the people that double down suffer from intellectual laziness. And I know that's a harsh thing to say, but that's the truth.
But statistics, statistics.
Yeah.
That's a lot of times that's what
actual numbers.
Yeah, that's where the double down comes down from. Like a lot of times people dig into finding more support. It's the funny thing about statistics. That's what I want to say, because that's what it seems like it happens a lot in these type of conversations. People will come back to you, it's not really like your point's invalid because basically statistics say this. Well, I've actually know people who work in statistics, and it's like they basically say, it's like, you tell me what you want to know and I'll give you the numbers to support it. And so that's where statistics are bullshit. I just said it. So
Harry Truman said there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. That's what Harry Truman said. With statistics, you can make it say whatever you want. And then the other thing too is that when you don't have the numbers on your side, that's when you get into something that you find in forensic debate that's called a logical fallacy. And people, cognitive dissonance.
The what about? Maybe.
Whataboutism, yep. Right? That forces people to retreat into logical fallacies to try to deflect or rearrange or reframe the discussion. And you see a lot of that too. And here's the other thing. This the interesting phenomenon of this is that I really believe that the logical fallacy has its roots in religion. It has to, because if you think about it, when you look at everything that you're taught biblically, and you begin to look at this rationally, you'll find that a lot of the pieces just don't add up. So now you're forced to either come to grips with what you believe, to stare down that barrel, or you have to come up with something to justify why it is that you believe that, why it is that you insist on remaining in that camp, even though it's been proven that the camp is, not valid. And that's part of the whole concept behind biblical literalism, is that it's easy to prove that the Bible is not inerrant, that it is not infallible, that it's full of biases, that it's full of contradictions. It's easy to prove these things. A cursory Google search will help you do that. But if you are really convinced that you have to believe this, and that if questioning it will cause you some harm down the road, then you've got to come up with some things. You have to do a little bit of what do you call it, theological gymnastics in order to make it work. And so people are going to do that. That's when the double down comes. That's when cognitive dissonance kicks in. That's where red herrings and straw man, and appeal to authority and all these things kick in, because I got to do something to justify this. And that's why I'd said this last week on Facebook, and it really pissed some people off. I said, that the Christian apologetics is essentially spiritual masturbation.
Yeah, I think that did get a lot of comments, if I remember, on Facebook.
Yeah, and it pissed some people off, because the thing is, if you're trying to defend, like, let me give you an example. Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson doesn't need anyone to defend him. Because number one, Mike Tyson can kick your ass.
Bite your ear off.
He's a badass dude. Number one. Number two, he has the kind of money that kind of insulates him from a lot of bullshit, because there's an old saying that life is like a shit sandwich. The more bread you get, the less shit you have to eat. Right. And then the third thing is that Mike is no mental midget. I don't know if you guys ever watched the Hot Boxing podcast, but it's phenomenal. And Mike Tyson is brilliant. So it's like, you can't kick his ass, you can't mess with his money, and you can't fuck with him intellectually. So when you get like that, there's a word, it's unfuckwithable. You reach that point. And so with apologetics assumes that you have to defend something. When apologetics or if you, whatever you believe in, whatever your faith is, it should be unfuckwithable. I believe it, and that's it. And but when you have to come up with a system of call and response, attack and defend, now what you've done is you've created something, you've created an apparatus to defend something that shouldn't require any defense.
Yeah. Makes sense. Makes you think, why, what are you getting so defensive about, for sure. I mean, Facebook is, I love and hate it. Yesterday was fun for me. I posted 3 things back to back, and I only ended up unfriending and deleting one person, which was unfortunate, because to go back and the whole conversation ends up getting deleted. So it's just kind of like, what's the point? It's wasting my entire day. But
what was it that you posted? I'm curious, because I didn't catch it.
So no, I had commented on somebody else's post that got deleted, but so I had a couple of them were political. One was, there was all satire type stuff, and so one was, don't forget, it's election day. God's Republican, but if you don't vote Democratic, then you're racist. And so that got more. Most people had a sense of humor that commented on that. The one that was of religious nature, I believe, was something like, one more question was like the last thing that I posted, and it did get the most traction. But it was just like, if 90% of the people that I hang out with now are, considered going to hell, and then the churches, or people that say they're going to heaven, or people that don't want to hang out with anyway. So what's the appeal? What's supposed to be the appeal to heaven?
Yeah.
And then I had to edit it later and was like, this is, kind of more of a universalism type question where I don't even know that there is a hell to go to anyway. But if, and so it created some interesting, conversation for sure.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that's another part of the deconstruction process, is the deconstruction of hell. Right. Because I believe that if I used to believe that if there was a heaven, there had to be a hell. And if you're going to be rewarded, there had to be some people that are rewarded and some people that are punished. And so the litmus test for this reward and punishment thing is, how did you handle Jesus? And they'll literally ask you that. in a lot of churches. That at the end of the day, God's not going to ask you how well you behaved or how nice you were. He's going to ask you, how did you handle
What'd you
Jesus?
do with Jesus?
And so, what did you do? What did you do with him? I don't know. I lost him. I misplaced him. Sorry.
I didn't know it was my turn to watch him. No one told me.
Exactly. So it's like I'm reverse engineering things. And so one of the things that I looked at all of the things that Jesus said about hell. And then I went back into the Old Testament. And I tried to find something where hell was mentioned. And then I tried to find situations where hell would be merited, right? Because obviously, listen, if hell is a big deal, surely when God created man and while he's in the garden, he would have said, listen, don't sin because this will send you to hell.
You'll surely die. He did tell you that.
Well, he's telling him die, but I mean, die or, go to hell. He said die. He didn't say eternal conscious torment.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
And then the first homicide occurs. And God doesn't say, well, I'm going to smite you down and send you to hell because you killed your brother. Your brother's blood cries out. It demands the full wrath of hell. No, there was grace. And then, then you go into Abraham and then you go to Noah and, getting drunk and sleeping with his daughters kind of thing. It's like all of these, well, no, Noah wasn't the one that slept with his daughter. That was Lot.
He just got naked and showed his junk.
Yeah, he just got naked. Yeah, showed his junk and cursed his sons and all of that. But anyway, all of these things where and then the people that were consumed in the flood, it never says that what their eternal fate was. It doesn't say it. It's nowhere. So then I went back and I said, okay, I need to go back and look in the Greek, in the original language, or at least the language that the Bible was originally written in, the New Testament, and find out what was he saying in hell. And so there's, Gehenna, Sheol, Tartaru, right? And those are basically the three words that are used for hell, and none of them pertain to eternal conscious torment.
None of it was Christian.
So I'm like, And here's the thing, that 100% of all of the people that Jesus dealt with, that he blessed, that he healed, none of them were quote unquote born again. None of them were, they were hellbound or anything like that. I mean, I'm like, okay, where is this coming from? And then I began to look at it in the context of the early church fathers, the canonization of scripture, and all of these things. And I began to connect the dots with this. And eventually I came to the conclusion that there is no hell. There's no hell. It can't be, because if the premise of 1 John is true, that God is love, if that premise is true, then there cannot be eternal conscious torment. Because think about this. How would eternal love
even
be able to
think something
know
that up?
That,
it'd be impossible for them to think that up.
Exactly. But, and when you go and look in Jeremiah, it's like God is telling Jeremiah that, hey, this never entered into my mind.
Are you an annihilationist then? Do you believe that's a possibility?
No. I'm a full reconciliationist or a universalist or whatever you want to call it. Basically, spirit is energy, and by the laws of physics as we understand it, that all energy returns to its source. It does what it does, and it returns to where it came from.
That makes the most sense to me.
That's the circular nature.
That was the most easy explanation I've ever heard of heaven in my life. Like, why would it go? Why would it go anywhere else? Why would it go anywhere else?
Let me say this one thing before, because Seth is about to chime in, and I want to make sure that I give him wide berth. But you think about this, right? When was man created in the Bible? It was Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 through 28. Let us make man in our own image, after our image and likeness. Let us make them, and let us give them dominion in the earth. So when was man with God? From the beginning. And so when is the beginning? Well, who knows, right? But let's just say that from time immemorial, that you were part of God, that you're created by him. You're part of him, right? So why is it then that on the grand timeline of eternity, that he would take 70 years, 80 years, 90 years, 100 years, or 5 years or 10 years of your life and judge your eternal destiny based on that. That just completely defies logic.
It makes no sense. It makes no sense, especially if you're going to exist forever. It's like, yep, exactly. It's like, here's my great love experiment. I'm going to allow you to be born into this earth where there's like, especially I'm going to want you to be born to 2020, and I want you to find me because I love you. I am with you forever, but find me.
Not in 2020.
And then don't lose me once you find me. Sorry, Seth. Go ahead.
So, yeah. Okay. I want to talk. Where, at what? No, I don't even know how to ask a question.
Just ask it, man.
Omar, you've jinxed me.
Oh, no.
But in talking about deconstruction, like where, I think you even said, are you a universalist? Is that what you said?
I mean, let me put it this way. I believe that God is everywhere. I believe that you are God. I believe that you, Seth, are God. That you, Elizabeth, are God. That you, Omar, are God.
See, Omar, you just said the words, and snap. Continue. Okay,
I agree with you. This is good,
God.
but
everybody
this is going to trigger Seth.
Well, watch this. This is where it gets really interesting. See, you know why people treat people badly? People only treat people badly because they haven't awakened to their divinity, right? If you know that you're God and you know that the person sitting across from you is God, are you going to offend that person?
Come on. That's so good.
No, you're not going to offend that person. It's like God is love. It's perfect love. So if I treat you like perfect love, and see, here's the thing. And again, what you mentioned earlier, Omar, how do you deal with things and not make it into a shit show? Well, it's easy. Like I said, I tell people up front, you are not my enemy. My issue, my beef is not with you. My beef is with what you believe. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I deconstructed from this, how I walked away from this, and hopefully you'll see it. Now, if you see it, that's great. But here's the other thing. Know this, that if I show something to you that I believe is true and you don't get it, fine. I still love you. Now, this is the other thing too, because I'm not the nice, easygoing guy. I will delete and block you with the quickness. I don't have a problem with that because it's social media, right? I don't give a fuck. But the thing is that if I know you, if I have a relationship with you, I can have disagreement with you and still be cool. But it's like, if I don't know you, I don't know you. What does it mean? Okay, delete and block. I don't need to see you anymore. Now, I still love you, but I love you like I love nuclear power. From a distance. There's a nuclear reactor right down the road, right here. And I can go, to the nuclear reactor. I can go outside of it and I can hang out around it or whatever. And the thing is that if I put myself, in that space without knowing the right precautions, then I can cause myself to be harmed, right? So I don't hang around toxicity. I don't subject myself to that. I'll kick that shit to the curb with the quickness, right? But at the same time, it doesn't matter. I mean, I still love the nuclear power. I love it. I absolutely love it. But I don't have to be up close and personal with it. And that's how I treat people.
Mm-hmm. So can we use a different word than God? Because what you're talking about...
Nope.
Yeah, sure. Source. The universe.
Source. So, okay. That it rubs me wrong. Like, I get the concept. I'm 100%.
You are a god,
100%
Seth.
in.
You are a god.
I am not okay with calling myself God.
Jesus
nor
is
am
your
I
brother.
Okay looking at any fallen man as God. That's not how this works. But I understand that we are
not,
that we are breed. That
who
God.
Who says we're fallen? Where do we get? That's the whole question. Who told you were naked? See, that's the whole thing. Listen, watch this, and I'm about to drop a blog post on this.
I love how I started this at the end of the interview. But
it's fine. Yeah,
this could be an entire another interview. But
what Jesus came to do? What did Jesus come to do? And everybody said, well, he came to save the world from its sin. No, that's not what he came to do. It's not what he came to do at all. Jesus didn't talk about saving anybody. He said one point. He said, the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost. The pronoun is important. You got to focus on that because it's that. It's not they. It's not them.
Seth,
It's not
pronouns
those,
are important.
It's not whom. So the thing is, nobody was fallen. That wasn't the issue. What happened is that we changed our mind about God. God never changed his mind about us. That's what Jesus came to show us. Jesus came to show us that you are just as divine as the day Adam rolled off the assembly line. You are just as good, you are just as holy, you are just as righteous, and you are just as much God as Adam was. That's what you need. And this is what, when you are God, you get to frame your universe.
Yeah.
You get to see, and that's the whole thing. People cannot frame their universe because they're stuck on religion, and they believe that they're fallen, and they believe they're sick, and they believe that they're wretched, and they believe that they're worms. Seth, let me tell you, just for the record, that you are fucking awesome. I told you that this morning, and I'll tell you that again. There is nothing wrong with you. There's nothing fallen about you. There is nothing in error, nothing wrong with you. There never was, and there never will be.
Don't contradict
you
it, Seth.
Are perfect. No, he can feel free. Feel free. Listen, I'm a big boy, man. I tell people all the time, man, I'm 6'1" and 260 pounds. And I'm a lifelong martial artist, you know, and I take insults on a daily basis. So it's like, you know, shit, bring the thunder, man.
In stepping out from traditional thought on this issue, okay? In stepping out on traditional thinking around this, where are you finding the confidence and security to continue down the path? Because even in my deconstruction process and what I'm doing, which they asked me a few days ago, Seth, how much have you deconstructed? And the answer was nothing. I'm still there. So it's funny, and I'm going to do a deconstruction series next month, but it's hilarious because I'm struggling with it a lot myself. But where are you finding the security to think?
Can I follow up with a completely unrelated question, Derrick? I want to know, what does your mom think about what you believe?
My mom thinks I've lost my mind.
How does that work in relationships with people who love you? The same thing Seth's asking, because it's a support base. You're losing.
No, listen,
my mom thinks the same thing about me.
Well, welcome to the club.
Thanks.
You know, I mean, it's like, I love my mom and I respect my mom. My mom is one of my best friends. She's not just my mom, but at the same time, what I'm saying is that I have found a way that works for me. And not only does it work for me, but I'm bold enough to share it with others. And it's working for thousands of other people. So, okay, you know, if it doesn't work for you, that's cool. You know, and the thing is, I have a younger brother who's, he's an associate pastor, and my sister, she's fairly new in ministry, my younger sister, and they both are like, you know, man, you're kind of like gone off the rails here, and you know. I tell them, no, I really haven't gone off the rails. It's just that I recognize that there are no rails to be on. And then on top of that, I have an older brother, which my older sister, she and I are really, we're like-minded. And then the other thing, my wife, this is the other thing too, is that my wife is my biggest cheerleader and she is my toughest critic. You know, if I'm really gone off the rails, so to speak, my wife will be the first person to check me on it, but she's like, okay, I get it. And she's rolling with me, you know? And so now knowing that, you know, my wife is in my corner, that Christ in me, you know, that I recognize the Christ in me. Listen, I don't have to worry about you, because I tell people all the time, you know, I said, listen, you know, you can't whip my ass. You can't mess with my money. And you know, you're not just going to run intellectual circles around me. So, you know, bring it on. I mean, it's like, I'm not saying that I can beat everybody, and I'm not saying that nobody can mess with my money, and I'm not saying that I'm intellectually superior to everyone. What I am saying is that I'm a capable person, and I'm very secure in myself. I know who I am. I know what I am. I'm completely clear on my identity. I can confidently say to the world that I am God. I don't stutter, I don't hesitate, and I don't back away from it. Because once I've understood this, I understand that the power that's within me, And this is the key part, is that I am also able to share this power with others and help others find out that that they too are God. And once you understand that, nobody, people can say what they want, they could do what they want. When you understand that you are truly divinity, you are unfuckable with.
Preach. Amen. That's a good way to...
Unfuckwithable.
Unfuckwithable. Yes, unfuckable with. It works too, I think.
No.
It doesn't? Unfuckable with?
No.
No, it doesn't.
No,
it doesn't work.
unfuckwithable. I had to go back and correct it. I'm kind of a grammar Nazi too. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Well, you won't like me then because I fuck up words all the time. I have Omarisms is what we call them.
No problem.
So, but no, dude, that's good. Seth, you have anything you want to say? I know we got to wrap up soon, but I'm so glad you got into this because we have had arguments about this.
Yeah, we've been fighting.
And this
this
is great because I always said that basically you and Kyle Butler agree on this. This is true. It's just different packages because the way Kyle Butler explains stuff, I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm right with it. But sometimes I hear the preacher in you, and so I'm like, but they're saying the same stuff, and I agree with them both, and I love them both, and I knew that once I talked with you, I'm going to get a different impression. You're passionate though, and Kyle's just kind of more like you described it, more not reserved, but he's I don't know.
He's laid back, man.
He's gotten shout outs twice at different points in this episode.
So, but I just thought that was great that it came up almost naturally, that we got into this because this is definitely a hot button topic inside the circles of the Fadecasters. And some people would say that they were in your camp before this interview. So I wonder how the conversation now happens, now that people have to accept the fact that we are all gods.
All right, so whose argument did I bolster here?
Mine.
I bolstered yours, okay. But I want to say this, and I want to say this to everybody who's listening, because I want you to know, if you're within the sound of my voice, that you are loved, that you are valued, that you were created to create, that you were created to bring about change, to bring about creation, to bring about beauty, artistry, all of that through the framework of love. You are love. You're not just loved, you are love. Because if God is love, and when God stepped out of eternity into a void to speak something and create everything, all he had at his disposal or her disposal is herself. So that means that everything came from God. That means if God is love, then that means you are love. And when you understand that, when you understand that you are divine, that you are love, that you are great, that you are creator, that you are whatever it is, you will not take shit off anyone else ever.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's a great confidence. It's like people hear that. I know Seth has a problem with that because it seems like there's like pride attached to that. There's like an ego boost, there's like somebody like a Trump would say, I am God, but I think that there's,
but when you say I am God to the regular man, they immediately think
mental illness,
that you need to go to a psych ward, or start taking your medication. I'm not trying to be rude, but that's how, I'm a mental health professional. I talk with people on the phone for 4 years on a crisis line with people who thought that they were gods, right? Mm-hmm. This guy, mental illness is serious in this regard. And so I get the message. I'm for the message. I understand the message. I just wish we could do it in a way that didn't make us all look crazy.
I feel like you're hung up on the language, not the point.
Perhaps.
When people get hung up on the theocratic aspect of it, that's what messes everyone up. Most of my colleagues, my professional colleagues, are Indian. They're Hindu. Most of them are Hindu. And so I'll go out and I have dinner with them. And here was the thing, like when I was really quote unquote a Christian, and I would tell them, my story, and I'd talk to them, and they're like, wow, I can't believe that you're a Christian because you're just so nice. You're so accommodating. You're not trying to proselytize. You're not trying to tell us we're, worshiping devils or whatever. And then I would tell them that I'm a pastor, and they really blow the cork. Right. But now it's like when I talk to my Hindu friends, that Hinduism as a practice has over 1 million gods.
Yeah.
Over 1 million. So when you say, I am God, they say, well, okay, I hear you. They may not necessarily agree. You may not be one of their deities, but they're cool with that because, polytheism is their thing. But they also believe that there is a greater creator over everything else. And I still believe that. I believe that there is a God creator, but I also believe that God created me to be a
like
creator
him.
like her.
Or her. Exactly. That's
right.
Good.
So the thing is that I don't trip on that, and it's not mental illness or anything like that. What it is confidence in knowing what my origin is and what my destination is. I came from this source. I'm going to return to this source. And while I'm here, I'm going to be the best manifestation of this source that I can be so that others can experience the best manifestation of this source that they can be.
Awesome. Well, we're going to wrap on that because we've gone a little over, but this has been great. It's been everything that I thought it would be and more for sure. And I want to say you didn't necessarily bolster my argument because it's not my argument. I'm just agreeing with what you guys are saying and seeing where light bulbs are coming on and dots are connecting to things that I've always kind of believed already. And it makes sense. And it is a huge claim. And Seth is correct as well in the fact that there are a lot of people like with mental illnesses that I've dealt with on Facebook who want to tell me that they are God. And I mean, they may even have like a really good understanding of things, but like the wires are crossed someplace, and that's where it gets interesting still, and why we can keep having this conversation about love. Because how do you love if you don't know how to love? If you don't love yourself, if there's something broken there, then how are you going to be able to love forward? So I really, truly appreciate you. And this is a wrap up, Seth, even with your fingers being twisting there. So I love you too, Seth. And I
love you.
And I thank you for the thorn that Christ has given me. I'm joking. It's completely but no, seriously, Derrick, you're a blast. You've been a blast. And we'll do it again sometime. Seriously.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
All right. We're off live.